Tuesday's team meeting, Jessica created an amazing chart to kind of add value to you guys, to help get, the idea is that it's a tool to help you get and have the conversation for your compensation conversations. And ideally, we are all shooting for that 3%. Right? Everybody wants 3%. And we're super excited that we have control over that now and not those silly listing agents that can't have good conversations.
So it's more of a reality now that Erica actually, and you worked through that and got that.
Yeah.
Yep.
3%.
Yeah, now I don't have to run away from help you sell.
For sure. Oh. Okay, so this is the chart I was referring to. Jessica put up at the Tuesday team meeting, and just a kind of quick brief run through it. It's a sample. I think this chart is going to be really cool. We're going to start including it in your buyer consultation packets. And I'm going to kind of share when you would use it in the buyer consult. And there's also a way to do it with net sheets. I think the net sheets come into play when you're in your counter offer stages. But this one will help set up to how to write, a winning offer. So real quick, this is just a sample $400,000 purchase price with 20% down. Your options are seller pays your commission with a good offer. The second one here, buyer pays it because they just signed an agreement that they're going to compensate you 3% for your services. And another option is increase the sales price by the amount of that commission, and kind of what that looks like. And there might be an option to finance it. Obviously, the minimum down payment in lending is 3.5%, and you want 3%. So it might not be an option for everybody, but someone that has at least 7-ish% to put down can use the finance option. If you're talking to someone with 10, 15, 20% down, maybe you've asked them that pre-qualifying question when you went through your buyer lead sheet before you set your appointment. You might know how much they actually have saved up for a down payment before you get here, so you can know if you're going to present this as an option. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
But they don't, if they're doing down payment assistance, that's not an option.
Well, Jessica didn't put it on here, but first-time home buyers have the down payment assistance. Obviously, they have to have proper income and those guidelines. Jessica, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. So let's say you have someone that does have 3%, but they were going to use it as a down payment, and they're a first-time home buyer. They could go get CalHFA to pay the down payment, and now they have 3% to pay you. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's correct. And there's a few options. If they're able to go conventional, we can get an extra percent towards closing costs. There's an option for that. So then, we could use that money and they would only have to come in with 2% then to pay you. So we could use that program. So there's different ways we can work with it.
So you're saying there's more options, but for you guys in this scenario, you're probably meeting with someone, so put it into context, that hasn't been pre-approved yet. Like, this is your consultation. So you're going to kind of use this finance it option to guide them towards getting talking to Jessica and learning if there is even more options for them to get this compensation covered. Does that make sense? So you don't have to know it. You don't have to just use it as a tool. Like, we might have more options, but the script is, we might have more options than this, but we really need you to fill out this loan application and Jessica can work with us and see if there's any other options. But for now, these are the basic 4 or 3, basically 3. Does that make sense?
For the finance option, where is that financed through? Like the lender?
Yeah, and I don't want to get into that one because again, right now we're using this as a tool to get them to sign your buyer's BRBC and to get them to a lender. If you spend all your time in your consultation explaining finance it, you'll be there for an hour and you won't get to anything else. Use it as a tool to get to the lender. But Christine, we can explain that to you at the end. For sure.
Yeah, all of these options are basically coming from the loan. So I think that answers your question. It's all coming through the loan. So it would be yes.
So when we're going to use this chart is hopefully, am I freezing? Everybody can hear me?
Hear ya.
Okay. During a buyer consultation, when you start to talk about the BRBC, maybe you find it appropriate when you're talking to them about how to write a winning offer. If you don't know what that means, inside your packet on this side, there's a whole flyer on how to write a winning offer. If you're reviewing that, this might also be a good spot, but I'll go over some scripts. You're also probably going to use this during negotiations, and there's 2 times where you negotiate. So just because you get them to agree to 3%, if you don't preemptively talk about this stuff in the buyer consultation, you're going to be negotiating your commission until the day you freaking close. And there's 2 more that are coming up during the time you write your or counter offers and negotiate that, and probably during requests for repairs also. So this is going to help you proactively keep your commission because you're going to set the stage. So in the buyer consultation, we never go straight to what we charge until after we've explained our value. Do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
So this is not a Zoom call for how to explain your value. We will do one, but in a nutshell, it's after you've talked about the showing process and what you're going to do for them during that, the offer process, what you're going to do during that, the escrow process, what's your role. So you're getting, as you're doing that in your consultation, you're getting their buy-in to work together. And when you're kind of done, there's like a transitional question, basically like, are you ready to work together? Okay, great. Let's sign this BRBC. Do you guys have any good transitional questions that you ask them to kind of get their buy-in? Like, yes, I'm working with you. I want to hire you.
Yeah, I haven't done it enough too. Maybe Erica. What do you think, Erica? I think.
Sorry, I was
After-
muted.
Say what?
Robin, can you repeat? I'm sitting here, but sorry, I was muted. Can you repeat
Sure.
that question that you asked about the line leading in?
Yeah, no, it's just after you explain your value, you're going to transition to sign the BRBC. But this is the crucial point where you want them to kind of like, we're moving forward, right? Okay, so next step is let's sign this agreement. You really want them to say, like, I'm moving forward, some sort of buy-in verbiage or body language, like, yes, let's move forward to the listing or the buyer's agreement. So
Yeah.
Carrie, you might have, because it's very similar to a listing.
Well, I don't know. I think I would just say, now that I've shown you what I do for you, my services for you as your agent, I keep, like saying for you, would you like to move forward and hire me to represent you and your best interest?
Yeah, you're just looking for that verbal or even body language, like, yep. Typically, if it's your SOI, you're probably not going to spend a ton of time on your value because they already trust you. They want to hire you, but be careful. Make sure you explain it, because when things go wrong, they're going to want to know what the heck you did for them anyways. So touch on it. But after yes, we want to work together, that's kind of your transition question to go pull out your BRBC that's already in we call the Manila folder, the working folder. It's kind of like your information. The black one we leave with the buyer, right?
Robin,
Yes,
can I
ma'am.
add something really fast on that before we move past that question?
Yeah.
I think that because on listings and then on buying, I kind of feel what I see is whether it's Zillow, right, or your SOI or whatever, they're looking, and if they're really looking and really motivated, like they want to keep movement going. So I kind of always say like, well, if it's listing, once we have this listing signed, that we're working together and we decide working together, I can start working on your behalf. And then like on the buyer side, like I, tell them like about kind of signing that. And this will allow me to, I just remind them, make all of our appointments, collect all the information for you, get all the background stuff. Cause I feel like then to tie it all up, I just remind them how quickly we can move, how I can jump in and work for them. And I feel like that's my almost to like, so are we signing? Like, are you ready to sign? Because once you do, I can start working for you. And I feel like, I don't know, that's worked for me.
I love it. This allows me to get started to work for you.
Yes.
You do that, listings too. I like it.
Yes.
And what I also liked what Erica said there is not only this allows me to get started, she uses an opportunity to kind of remind them of what she's going to do for them. It allows me to get started to set up showings. What are some of the other things you said, Erica?
Get the background information, because they'll always ask about, right? Like this has solar, but what are the payments? What is this? So it tells me, it lets me get all the, behind the scenes information for you, that everything you'll like want to know even before we go, maybe, I don't know.
Perfect. I like it. I'm going to add that. That's great. That's a great script. Thank you for sharing and adding. I love it. If you guys have anything to add, please speak up, because I would love this to be more interactive than like lecture. And BRBC, you can call this like before it was mandatory, we used the verbiage like loyalty agreement. This agreement that you're signing just says like what I'm going to do for you. And this is kind of the first line. This is our blank agreement, loyalty agreement, listing agreement, however you want to word it. And it outlines both of our duties and responsibilities, what I'm going to do for you and what your part in this is. Does that make sense? Okay, I think I'm just going to stop. We had Marissa join and Marco. Thank you guys for joining. Feel free to participate if you can. Say hi if you can. Okay, you must be in a spot where you can't, but thanks for being on. And then you're Sherry's really good at these transitional questions to kind of lead into it. Sometimes you might need to explain the whole change to help them understand why they're doing this. But if you don't, I don't even know if I would necessarily go there, because Jenny and I had an experience yesterday where that took a lot of time. And I think the more normal this becomes, the less we're going to have to say, did you hear about the NAR changes? You know what I mean? It's just going to be like a listing, like, okay, now we sign this. So, but I do have, one of the things I love about this agreement that we now have to sign in order for me to get you inside a house is that buyers are now getting the same opportunities as a seller to interview and hire a realtor that they know will work for them and do all the things that they want. I think Sherry had one like this. Did someone say something? Nope. Okay. Sherry said, and I think you use this kind of at your open house to get them to sign that new sign-in sheet. You kind of lead into, are you familiar with the changes in our industry? Is kind of how you word it. And you just kind of listen to learn how much they know.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you either add, correct, feedback or whatever. Another transition.
I kind of summarized, they every single one had some knowledge. And I said that, okay, what you will be signing, this is just for open houses, but it could transition a little bit.
Mhm.
What you will be signing is a document that is going to clarify the agency relationship, which is a result of the NRA decision. And I said, it's gonna let you know that I am clearly representing the seller with whatever I share with you. And you're acknowledging my signing. So
Right.
they
And
seem
that's
to do good, yeah, at just at high level, not explaining anything else.
right.
Nobody asked any questions.
And to transition or to use that or branch off of that for the BRBC, basically like you're signing the open house sign-in sheet to make sure I'm here on behalf of the seller. You're signing this, to make sure I represent you, my duties, and this next bullet point. Basically, sorry, I lost my. Just like when you hire anyone, you discuss terms of compensation. And that leads into, and you have the BRBC out, and you're pointing to when you hire me and our whole team, we charge 3%. And you can kind of keep going with, there's nothing better than an employee that pays for themselves, right? And not maybe not employee, but like everyone's hired a gardener or someone to do work at their house, and you discuss when that's going to be done, what they're going to do, and how much it's going to cost, right? So everyone can kind of relate to that. But let me show you how I can pay for myself is like a great lead in to these options, and that's a huge value that you guys have. So not only am I going to do all of these things, I have a couple of options to where you don't have to pay this 3% or different ways to pay it that may be better fit for you. And you're leading into, because you don't want them to object. 3%, what? Right? Well, let me show you how I'm going to get that pay covered, whatever words you want to use. Did someone have a question? No. So kind of big picture again, you're sitting across from them, you have the BRBC out, you get to the part where you're asking about your compensation, and then you bring this chart out and you start reviewing it. Here's some options. The seller can pay for it. And you see my bullet point number 1, most likely they have built the compensation into the purchase price. Not all sellers will do this, but because you don't want to commit that you will always get it covered, because if you don't, it becomes a very difficult conversation, right, Erica?
Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to look for my mute button.
You don't
So-
mean to.
What was that?
Oh, I think Marissa accidentally.
Sorry, I didn't know I was not on mute. I'm like trying to multitask and do like 6 things. Sorry, guys.
No
I'm gonna
worries.
mute that.
No worries. So you have to be careful with saying you're going to get your compensation covered, because it might bite you in the butt when you get, you know what I mean? So, so you want to say most likely it's built into the purchase price. So in other words, if we make a full price offer and ask for this 3% to be covered, that's a likely scenario. That's option 1, seller pays. Obviously, option number 2 is the obvious, you pay it out of pocket, and I'll show you what this looks like with real numbers. There's another option to increase the purchase price by this dollar amount of our commission. And this is an opportunity to say, let me show you what I mean by that. So here are some potential scenarios. So I'm on 3A. Not all list prices include a 3% compensation, but we won't really know that until we go show it. We might be able to know it before we write an offer, but when we're going to really know it is when we submit this offer and that we get that seller's response. So here's an example of that. So there's a full price offer asking for 3%. and a seller counters back to us saying that they'll only pay us 2%. So we have to do the math for them, and so we're still in a buyer consultation. We haven't wrote an offer yet. So let me just kind of show you what that looks like. And you pull out the chart again and you do some math, or you could have some net sheets already prepared. And I did the math here. And then of course your fourth option, Mr. Buyer, is finance it. Have you talked to a lender yet? This is where you go into your lender conversation. Okay, I'll get you hooked up with Jessica. We're going to pause on this number 4 option for now until we can get some numbers back from the lender. Does that make sense? So this is still in a buyer consultation. You just want them to hear this the first time. They're probably going to forget it. They're probably not going to totally understand it, but it's going to make it easier when you go write that offer and you ask them, how do you want to structure our offer?
And Robin, can I add that maybe, I mean, this might just be, it's just maybe a small detail, but for me it wasn't. But when you say that, remember that the built into like a full price offer, possibly a full price offer, maybe adding and not asking for anything, because remember mine was a full price offer asking for 5,000 in closing cost, and we kind of had to circle and have that conversation. But we offered full price. You know, it still wasn't covered, but that 1% happened to equal their like 5,000 in closing cost.
Definitely.
So
another great spot to have that conversation, which I kind of skipped over, so thank you. Oops. Is coming back up here to review chart, seller pays for it. Again, you're in your consultation, you have all these resources in front of you. You can show them the purchase agreement and so you're actually going to be pulling out that side of the packet where you have how to write a winning offer, because behind it is an actual offer. And this was Jenny's idea. She had heard this, and I think Carrie had said that too. You just pull out the page. Where is it? Back in here. We have it. You show them how you're going to request that in an offer. You guys know what form I'm looking for? A+ if you know the acronym.
Yeah. Oh, the
The seller's
sellers,
thing, I don't know what they call it, the seller's compensation page.
So that you submit with your offer when you want the seller to pay.
The BRBC?
I think
It's the SPBB,
SPB.
PBB. And
right? Is that it? Is that what we're talking about?
I believe so, but I'm not finding it in my packet. I don't think we have it in here. We need to add that.
Yeah, I don't know if we've added it yet.
You are correct though, SPBB. So,
Yeah.
do you recall what each acronym stands for, Christine?
Seller payment to buyer's broker.
Man, you are an A+. I love it.
That's just because I keep like a copy of all the forms like in my living room, and anytime I'm like even thinking about or discussing it, I like look up. I just want to be familiar with them, so I'm kind of cheating. I have it right here.
Nice. I love it. So what this would look like in front of your buyer is, hey, on option 1, the seller pays for it. Most likely the compensation is built into that purchase price. And so we're going to make an offer at the full price. And then this is the form that we use to request this 3% to be covered by the seller. And I think that will make them feel very comfortable that there is a process and it's normal and there's a form for it to get it covered. So they'll be more likely to agree to say yes and sign your BRBC. Do you get that? Or do you agree with that? I mean,
I do, yeah.
And this is a great spot because you already have the offer out, you're showing the SPBB, and this first page, this cover letter to that is how to write a winning offer, and you can talk about price versus terms. And this is where Erica was what she was talking about. So we can make a really great offer, but Mr. Buyer, if you need a bunch of things like compensation covered, lender's closing costs, termite inspection, pool inspection, and you want the seller to pay for all these things, that list price that we're looking at might not be, we might have to adjust that. We might have to go up to get these things covered. So again, you're just planting a seed, price versus terms. You have to sell your house. That's a term. So that we might need to compensate for these blemishes on your offer through price. Or like Erica said, we need to write what we call a clean offer, Mr. Buyer, and we only focus on giving the seller what they want and getting our compensation paid for by them and nothing else. So you're just, again, setting the stage for when you define the perfect home and start writing an offer. Now you get to say, hey, remember in the buyer consultation when we talked about price versus terms? Let's talk about that, how it portrays to this house that we want to write an offer on. So you've planted the seed. It makes that conversation a lot easier. Would you agree?
Yes.
Thanks, Erica.
Yes, I agree.
Thanks, Marissa. Okay, so I was gonna move on to how to use not necessarily the chart, but the same idea that's on the chart during negotiations. But before I move on, do we have any questions on how to use it to get the BRBC signed?
Well, my only question is, are we, and maybe we're not gonna do this right now, but what if they say, but you're talking as if I'm making a full price offer. I get why we would wanna do that, but maybe we don't wanna make a full price offer. I'm just not like, when are we gonna do, devil's advocate, like.
So
be
remember,
prepared.
we're in a buyer consultation, so I don't think they're going to say that, Carrie.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
But you just say, we'll
Okay.
kind of back to Erica's service, and the service is, I'm going to get the background information. So when we look at homes, Mr. Buyer, I'm going to help you structure your offer, and I will let you know if it needs to be full price based on information, if we can go under, if we need to go over because there's already multiple offers on the table. So I'll share that information with you so we can make the best offer for you to win this property.
Perfect. Yeah, like that's part of what I do for you. So we'll discuss that later. Moving along, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I would like say discuss it later, but we can just, because right now, if we discuss that, there's so many what ifs, we haven't even picked the property. So I can make up all these scenarios. You know, if you ask for a bunch of stuff because the house is in poor condition, we can either ask for the seller to pay for a bunch of stuff, terms, or we can reduce the price by all the stuff that needs to be fixed. You see how we kind of need to address this once we pick the house that we want? So do you get that a lot in your buyer consultations, or do you get that when you're about to write the offer?
I would say when I write an offer, depends on the house.
Right. So they're going to say, you know, what should we offer? Or I'm not giving them full price for this, or, you know,
Yeah.
right? Is that kind of what you're saying, Christine?
Yeah.
So we now fast forward, we're done with buyer consultation. We've shown houses and now they're ready to write an offer is what you guys are talking about. But if you don't plant the seed here about price versus terms, it will make that conversation slightly harder, but now you've had it. So you guys get to say, hey, remember when we talked about price and terms? And one of the things I do for you is, I call the listing agent and I find out the seller's background story, what they're willing to do, what they're not. Are there any offers on the table? And now I can put this together and help you write the best offer. So if they say, well, I don't want to offer full price, and you can say, well, they have 4 offers on the table, so that's just probably not going to be a strategy to win this, but I'm okay writing the offer for you if you'd like. I just needed you to know that with 4 other offers, you go under, you know, but again, your decision, you're the boss, you know.
I feel like those are like normal conversations we've been having
Yeah,
anyways.
definitely.
Like,
Yeah. Any other objections you think you might get in the consultation? Because remember, we're just using this to help you show them just to calm down a little bit on the 3%. There's all these ways we might get it covered. I'll add one thing. I would definitely not skip over number 3 here. You want to plant the seed that it's not always built into the purchase price, or we might not always write the best offer. So there could be a point in time when we write an offer and we ask for the full 3% to be covered. But based on the offer we wrote, the seller might reply with not paying the full 3%. And so for example, they'll only pay 2, that means we have a gap of 1%. Again, I'll show you ways to get that covered if that happens, but you're setting their expectations that we might have this conversation more than once. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Because I think Christine, way back when this first started, you had this scenario. I remember you walked in the team meeting like pissed that this agent did this. And then Erica and I had this conversation. It was like, I'm not going to stand. The mindset was, now my commission is standing in the way of this buyer getting the home. I'm going to cave and just accept 2%. And if you don't have these conversations up front, I can see why you would feel that way. But if you had it up front, it's a little bit easier to say, hey, we tried really hard to get it all covered. They countered back and we have a gap, a little bit of a gap.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get into that a little bit more detail. So again, consultation is planting the seed, AKA setting expectations. So don't skip over that, don't make them think that it's going to always be covered by the seller. Okay. Good on that? Is it okay to move on to how we would use this chart or net sheets during negotiations?
Yes.
Do you think that chart will help ease and make it easier to get the BRBC signed at 3%? Are you convinced of that?
I am.
Yes.
I think that's a great chart.
Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like it gives me more confidence too not just for them, but also like, I think that is giving me a little more confidence.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah, it gives us talking points to look at and use.
Yeah. So when you make an offer, I would encourage you to put together a home, we call them net sheets for the buyers, so they can see how much their mortgage payment's going to be at that price and how much cash to close. We do this on the list side. When we receive offers, we put a seller net sheet together. You can do this for your buyers. So let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, now I have to share this screen. What do you guys see? A home estimate? So this is an example of the buyer making like a $400,000 offer. Let's say that's full price, that's full list price. And they're asking the seller to pay your commission. So you put together this net sheet so they see it, and and it's an estimate. If you can get your lender to do it, that would be cool, but sometimes we don't have time for that. But what you're showing them is, this is a 10% down, I believe. So basically, when we make this offer to the seller and they say yes, you're going to come in with about $49,500, and your mortgage payment's going to be $2,447. And they're gonna be like, okay, yep, I get it. That's their cash to close. So now we get a response back from the seller because we asked for our 3% to be covered. How do I go back to this screen share here? Do you see negotiations counteroffer?
Yes.
Okay. So the seller counteroffer says, hey, we'll accept everything in your offer, except we're only paying 2%, not the full 3%. So the first thing you want to do is quantify that gap. If you keep the conversation on your commission percentage, it will be a difficult conversation. But if you quantify it, what is 1%? Sorry, it's not 400K. Oh, 1% of 400,000 is $4,000, right? So now you're going to switch your dialogue to that gap. You're going to figure out the gap. What is the dollar amount needed to bring buyer and seller together? And in this scenario, it's $4,000. And how you word it to them is, we got a counter. So what that means, Mr. Buyer, is our offer was not good enough. But the good news is the counter tells us exactly what we need to do to get this house. And then you explain the counter. So it's not about your commission. It's that their offer was not good enough, right? Do you guys like that script? Do you agree with it?
Love that script. Yeah.
The second thing you're going to want to do is, so you're going to explain the counter. This is the part where I say, let the Marlin run. You have already processed this. They're hearing it for the first time. So you got to let them get out all the things. Maybe it's negative things about the seller. Maybe they're just like, I don't know what that means. You know, think of your scenarios when you present counter offers. What is their reaction? It's usually not great, huh? No one has a counter offer experience?
Well, they just usually are negative, like, well, if they think I'm gonna do that, well,
Yeah.
I'm not coming up anymore.
Right. So the part of the script, what I love is you're like making a counter a good thing. So it wasn't good enough, but holy cow, we get this second chance opportunity. They told us exactly what we need to do to get this offer, to get this home. So now you're making the counter a good thing. So that's why that part's important. I just wanted to kind of explain that. And then don't ever let them sit there and think about what they have to do, because they don't know. So this is where you start to say, hey, I have thought of a few options to make this work for you. May I share them with you? And they usually say yes. Oh, thank God, because they don't know all their options. They might know 2 or 3, but they don't know them all, right? And A and B might seem obvious, and we also do this in the request for repair conversation. Hey, here's our options. We can do these. We cannot do any of these. Or option 3, we can do something in the middle. Let me share what that looks like. So we're doing the same thing here. And that sets you up for a great conversation during request for repairs because they know the process. Here are your options. Number 1, we can accept this counter. And here's what it means for you. Number 2, we can hold firm and call their bluff. Number 3, we can increase the purchase price. Number 4, we could go back and talk to our lender and see what it would look like to do anything different. And then you'll have prepared these net sheets and you're going to now quantify it for them. You're going to show them what each of these options means in dollars. So here's the example again. You offered full price, asking for 3%. Number 2, sellers counters back saying they'll only pay 2%. You quantified the gap. In this situation, it's $4,000. You go through the script that says our offer was not good enough, but here's your options. And then you're showing the net sheets. So option 1 is accept the counter the way it is. And then you pull that up. And I'm going to show that to you. So you'll have to prepare these net sheets. Does everyone feel like they can, I'm just curious, and if this needs to be another class, we can do that, but does everyone have the a NetSheet app on their phone so they can do this on the fly wherever they're presenting offers and counter offers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then did you present stuff?
Okay.
Robin, can I add something too? Sorry.
Yeah, please do.
Just because it was my last experience with it, but sometimes when we quantify that gap, I really like that you said quantify the gap and put it in dollar amount. However, in my situation, they ended up coming back and they saw that number, right? The number that was quantified, and took that as an additional fee. Those were their words to me. And so it came back and she was like, thank you for all of that. I'm just reading her text. She's like, can you reiterate what the additional fee is? I know you mentioned lawsuit, which I told you I didn't. When we were talking before, we said NAR settlement, right? And it back when we first talked, she's like, I know you mentioned lawsuit, but what exactly is it for? I'm doing a horrible job at understanding this. And then I replied to her, like clarifying it's not, how it wasn't an additional fee. But anyway, I don't know. Do you want me to read you my response?
I think I'm out of context because so this was a counter and you quantified it to 5,000 and she thought it was an additional fee.
Yes, remember it was the 48.90, and for the sake of just rounding up, we were kind of saying 5,000, but it was a 48.90, and so she was interpreting that as an additional fee because I quantified it in a number. So anyway, I was just saying that sometimes that happens, and then I had to go into explanation how it really wasn't an additional fee, and then explaining what it was.
So I think if you would show them the net sheet when they made the offer,
Yeah.
Showing them that you're asking this 3% compensation to me is your fee. This $5,000 in closing costs you're asking is your fee, but we're asking the seller to pay for it. So good news is they decided to pay for most of it, all of it, but $4,800, your fee. It's not an additional fee. We just didn't get it all covered.
Correct. I was just saying that she interpreted it that way. So buyers might interpret it as an additional fee. So I had
Yeah.
to
She's just confused.
how it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because we quantify it instead of we took it out of like, hey, they're paying 2%. That only left us with 1 because I said, there's a gap of 48.90. I do like it because it puts it in dollars. I'm just saying it ended up coming back that she thought, what's this additional fee for 48.90 or like even the $5,000, so I had to just explain to her that it wasn't an additional fee and kind of like clarify what it was to her.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did put that spin on it that you just said. I even added here on the plus side, it's pretty good that we got them to agree to pay more than half. Like trying to do an upside of, hey, they're paying the majority. And really there's only.
Sure. So back to the counter and we've quantified the gap on this example of $4,000, right? Because we asked for. Go ahead.
Sorry, can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is, I don't know, something that will probably come up. Like we go through the appointment and a lot of times, like I've noticed this, they'll like just sign stuff and agree to stuff and not really, you don't realize how much they really don't understand it. So like in that situation, Erica had, when they got the 2% covered, and then there was a gap of the 1%. And then they realize like that is additional money they have to bring, like say at that point they really like understand it. What would be, and they're like, well, we don't have this $4,000. What would be like, is that at that point when you would kind of go to like the finance portion of that?
No, you're gonna, so I'll back up. To preemptively strike that, Erica did not have a buyer consultation, so it was seeing it for the first time. And so I cannot stress enough to have a buyer consultation.
Yes,
So
okay.
they might not hear it, but it's gonna make that
Okay.
conversation way easy. But we
Okay.
have Zillows, and this is a perfect example. Zillow, you have to run out and show that property. And in Erica's case, she showed the property and they wanted to write the offer right then and there.
Right
So
then.
in
Okay.
reality, she did not have time to do
Got
that,
it.
right? So
Yeah.
now she's in it. So to answer your question, because you're there, this is the reality. She's going to break it down with these options and pull out net sheets and
Okay.
show them.
Okay.
So when you write the offer, if you do a net sheet, you get to bring it back up. Does everyone see the original offer net sheet?
Yes.
Okay, so the seller countered back. So in this net sheet, we asked the seller to pay the full 3% of our compensation, right? So they counter back and say, we'll only pay 2. We quantified that as $4,000. So you bring this up and then you would probably just handwrite plus $4,000 on this 49. Does that make sense? So you're going to have to come in with 53,500. So option 1 is just to accept this counter as is, and it means instead of coming in with 49,500 cash to close, you're going to come in with 53,500 cash to close. Do you like this option, Mr. Buyer? Right? Like, so then you go to option number 2. Hey, we can just hold firm. There's no other offers on the table. Let's call their bluff and we're back to our original offer. Do you want to do that? Option number 3, you know, let's say, no, I don't have $4,000 more. I only have $49,500, Robin. You know that, you know, that's why you were supposed to get this covered. Okay, great. I totally understand. That brings me to offer number 3. We can increase the purchase price by the $4,000. And let's see. So I'll show you. Option number 3 is written right here. We can increase the purchase price by $4,000. So now we counter back saying purchase price to be $404,000. What that means to you, Mr. Buyer, is this is an amazing sheet. So if we did that at, you see down here, $404,000, it increased your cash to close only by $472. And your mortgage payment only went up by $24. Do you think you can afford $24 more a month? And do you think you can come up with $472 cash to close by the close of escrow in the next 30 days? So you can't do 4,000, but can you do 400? And they're like, yes. So that's another option to get this covered. And do you see how it's not $4,000 anymore? Oh my God, these jerks of sellers. It's $400 more on my cash to close and only $24 more a month. Now, Mr. Buyer, which option do you like? So Erica, you can play devil's advocate like you did the other day when you were so scared to offer these options. She must be busy.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I was on mute. I feel like that silence that everyone just had sounds like my phone call with you. Like why I was, so scared because, right? I mean, when you're talking money with the buyers, and then if there's Zillow, I mean, which, and they don't know you very well, I feel like it's a very like, I mean, until we get used to it, it's an awkward conversation. As confident or as, knowledgeable as you're trying to sound, it's still upsetting to get it out. But
it's a mindset, right?
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
guys are feeling like your 1% is standing in the way, but you have to remember they agreed to pay this, just like they agreed to pay the lender's origination fee. They're agreeing to pay the escrow fee. No one's asking them to, it's now one more fee that they have to pay to get this house.
Robin, in you just saying that, you just said that they agreed to it. That is what I felt like was very helpful in this situation, because you mentioned how I went in the timeline of it. But because we do have to have them sign something, she signed a BRBC while we were there to go see the place. It was at 3%. And so when I did explain it, and again, that was an additional fee, I work for a 3% commission. And this was that contract that you and I signed when we saw the property. It kind of put it back on like, oh yeah, remember we met, we talked about it, we signed it. This is part of that.
And you guys are getting it covered and you're giving them options, and there's still option number 4. If this doesn't work for them, I would say you probably don't have to go to option number 4 and talk about how to finance the remaining $4,000, because I will tell you in experience that when you quantify it like this, raise the purchase price by $4,000, what does that mean? It doesn't mean $4,000. You're only coming in with an additional $400 in the next 30 days, and your mortgage payment goes up $24 a month. So instead of $2,445, it's $2,472. And they usually are like, oh, yeah, let's do that, in my experience. But your guys' silence makes it's either you haven't experienced it or there's still some objection, and I would love for you to say it out loud.
For me, it's lack of experience with this, first of all. So maybe in like about 3 months, maybe I'll have that, really value my input. Right now, I'm just soaking it in, and everything you guys bring up is an option for me.
Yeah. So I call that option 3 method the reduce to the ridiculous method. You're reducing this huge number into something so ridiculous. So you can add to this script this huge number of $4,000, that jerk of a seller, now I have to figure out how to pay it or I don't get this house, is reduced down to $24 a month. That's like not going to Starbucks twice. Do you see how ridiculous that 4,000 went down to 2 trips to Starbucks and you get your house?
Yeah.
So Erica had a really cool success story though. When she presented all the options, I think I was even coaching her like, they're gonna pick option 3 because it's like, it's a no-brainer. But they opted to pay the difference, cash. So they opted for accepting the counter the way it was.
Because that was one thing I was like thinking about. I've talked to a couple of people about like a similar scenario. It wasn't someone I was actually working with, just like a friend just talking about stuff. And they were like, well, I don't think, just with interest rates, they're like, they wouldn't want to like finance that. They're like, you're paying interest. It's not 24 because over the life of the loan, I'm paying interest on that also. That's a lot of
But
money.
if they don't have the
More than
cash, it's
24.
the only, you know,
I'm
the
just
only
saying
way to
that
get their
like
home.
as that objection, I think 1 is a good option too. Like for some people, they're gonna think I just have had that conversation, you know, so I think 1 is a good one.
Christine is has a different buyer than Jenny has right now. You know, Jenny, you're like, not if they don't have the cash. So Christine, you have an experienced buyer, you have a buyer that has the savings, has some money, because they usually think that way.
Yeah.
Jenny's is probably more like a first-time home buyer, or you know, literally doesn't have cash. And I've had this experience. So my first job was working at a company called Aaron's Sales and Leasing. And it was a furniture store that you could go and lease the furniture for a monthly payment, like living room furniture, bedroom furniture, a washer and dryer. And on the sales tag, like the tag that says, how much is this couch? it said, you know, $4,000 for this couch, or you can make a payment of $50 a month and you'll own it in 2 years. And on the under that, it said how much more you would pay if you went for the lease option, the $50 more a month.
Mhm.
You know how many people paid all cash for their couch?
Like none, or a
Zero.
lot. Yeah.
So much so that this business owner went and opened a company called Rimco, where you can buy rims for your car. And they
Wow.
had the same option, $400 per rim, and you get these fancy, flashy, spinny wheels, or $20 a
Oof.
month. And $20 a month meant that $400 rim was like $1,000 by the end of the payment. They always chose the $20 a month because some people think in monthly budget, how much money do I have per month? And then Christine's type of buyer thinks, well, $5,000, I have that now. If I finance it, it's going to take 16 years, you know, $24 divided by 5,000. It's going to take 16 years to realize that, plus all the interest I've paid on that $24.
Yeah.
But you're finding
Almost.
options for people to get in their home. Plus, they're not going to stay in the home for 16 years. We all know that.
Yeah.
So knowing what type of buyer you have will help you. And that $5,000 in closing costs, they can write that off on their taxes. So that it's not $5,000 or $4,000, excuse me, in this example. It's less because they can write it as a write-off as an expense of the home when they file their taxes. So
Because
again,
it's part of the commission, or can,
closing costs.
so say a buyer, so say the seller pays the full commission, all closing costs can be written off?
Mhm.
Oh,
One
That's
time in my
good.
career so far, I had a buyer come to me, made an offer. He said, what commission did you and your seller agree to? I said 6%. He goes, okay, I want to reduce the price by 6%, but I'm going to pay you the 6%. So my sellers didn't have to pay, but they had to reduce their price. So it was a wash.
yeah.
But for him, his taxes were now, it was a
Yes.
very expensive house. His taxes were reduced and he got to write off because it was an cost of sale. It's a different buyer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like,
Talking
I
about two
feel
different
like I
buyers.
have a couple of people I need to call and mention that too.
So that's
Like-
another thing, another point when people are like, oh my God, I don't want to pay my own commission. Hey, do you know it's a tax write-off?
Yeah, that's a great talking
Yeah.
point.
So, okay, well, it's 12:05. I have some time to stay on and chit chat, but I just want to see if anybody needs to jam, and do you have any questions before you go? These are all great. Like, any objections you're getting?
I think it'd be good to kind of revisit this again as people get more and more stories. It's gonna evolve,
Sure.
same format, basically.
Yeah. Jenny and I went on a buyer consultation yesterday, and we were there for over an hour, and we did not get it kind of, there's a lot of mistakes that I made, not Jenny. Jenny was following me. That looking back, I wish I would have done differently. I never got to explain the value that what we're going to do for them. Keep in mind, it was an SOI, so I kind of thought they already knew. But I also learned that because this part to get them to sign the BRBC took me an hour to get there, tells me I have to practice and do this more, because that has to be shortened, because I didn't even get to the value. And had I done that, it would have been a 2-hour appointment. No one wants to sit in front of you for 2 hours, although the wife was a talker. So that kind of.
Okay, so when you're saying, like, on just this example, you're saying you didn't get to that part, then, and we're kind of going to try to start with that part. I guess I'm just curious, like, so when you got there, how did I
Screw up so bad?
like not screw up, but how did you not, just because I feel like that could happen to me too. So I just want to like know
I
what
made
went
the
wrong.
I made the classic mistake. It was an SOI.
Okay.
So I assumed that they already knew what I would do for them.
Okay.
So I did not start there. And the first question asked, they took control of the conversation, and they asked me a question, and instead of saying, hey, we'll get to that, I want to talk to you a little bit about this first, me taking control of the conversation, we just rolled and the conversation kept going. And then at some point it would have been very weird to go back to it.
To go back.
Then
Okay.
I knew I made my mistake was he asked me a question. He was like, so will you do this for me? I can't remember what it was. Jenny, you might remember. And I was just like, yeah, I do that for you. That's part of my service. And I'm like, shit, I did not explain that,
Mhm.
I mean, there was some good parts to it too. Another first mistake, I don't know if you're ever going to do buyer consultations in the living room. They're probably going to come to your house. Your office. You're probably going to do it on a hood of a car if it's a Zillow. And even on a hood of a car, you can't really do a good one. So, you're trying to get them back to some spot where you can sit down across from them and do it. We chose to go to their house. They're older instead of coming down to the office. And this is true for listing appointments. You need to go to a kitchen table. No big decisions are ever made sitting in the living room on the couch with your feet kicked up. And that's exactly where they led us. But I did.
Okay.
I looked around. These people had so much crap in their house. They had a formal dining, could not sit there. There was too many fancy things. The breakfast nook, crap everywhere. The counter, crap everywhere. So I was just like, crap, I guess we're sitting in the living room. So I knew there was going to be it was gonna be harder to get them to agree and close them because you don't make decisions sitting on your couch. So don't go sit on people's couches. They will always lead you there though. So you have to.
I always suggest the table. I'd be like, oh, is there a spot on the table that I could sit if that's okay? And I always suggest where I want to sit just because it does get really awkward on the table. I mean, in the living room.
Yeah, you can't pass papers back and forth. You can't show these net sheets.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is how to use the chart and how to use your net sheets to help get your 3% and continue to get the full 3% and not have to fold and adjust if the seller isn't willing to pay it.
You're not using Chicago Agent 1, are you? What did you use on that one?
Chicago Agent 1.
Oh, you did? Okay. I don't know why mine's off. Like mine doesn't, it's like so off. When I do the calculations on my calculator, I kind of know how much it should be. And I need to adjust. There's something obviously a setting
there
on
like
my
tax?
calculator because it's way higher.
Is it taxes
It might be.
on yours?
Something is throwing me off and I feel like I can't show a buyer this.
With the update, they automatically put in buyer compensation 3%. It might be in there.
Yeah.
And take it out.
Okay.
I don't know if you could like hold your phone up to the screen, it might help.
I did. Well, I did. I'm the one that put 3%. It was saying 0, but I want to show them it if they had to pay it,
Yeah, so.
Because I had that happen the other day too. I was using it and
just
it
the buyer
was
one. I
really
always use the
high.
seller one.
This
don't
is
ever
by
use the buyer
state.
one.
It's higher. Is yours at 61?
Well, I was doing my own. I just put 400,000. Oh, you did too, actually.
400,000. This, it doesn't show it on my breakdown because it's on page 2 and I didn't put page 2 here. But this
And you
is the
put
buyer
10%
paying
down.
12.
3%. Let me see what it says. It says 61. Yeah. So it is the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I think it's because I was changing it to VA and I was trying to put 0 down, but then I wanted it to take the lending part in consideration, which is about 3%, usually, anywhere, whatever, 2 to 3%. That's, I think, why.
Right.
I don't know what this is. What does this say that the lending part is going to cost? Is it 2%, 3%? Like, I guess that's where I'm confused.
The lending?
Yeah, like the closing cost.
Closing costs, fixed costs, 19 grand, prepaids, 1,800. There's no percentage. They itemize it.
But I wonder what they're using to get that number is what I'm saying. Cause like when I tell my people, I'll be like, oh, well, your closing costs are usually anywhere from 2 to 3%, depending on if you do a buy down or not, so that I could give them that number. And this is like, I don't know what number this is, you know?
No, I don't understand that.
No,
This
I've
is-
never told them percentage. I always use the itemized.
I tell them percentage because Jeremy would tell me like, hey, it's gonna be about 3% closing cost. And that's why I would use a percentage.
Okay, so what's 3% of $400,000?
Let me see. I think it was 12,000. Let me look. 100,000. Yeah, 12,000.
Okay, so the problem with what you're seeing here is my itemized, it's 2 pages, and I didn't, because I just wanted to show you this, but I could go through that with you, Jenny. So 12,000, so this 19, this fixed cost of 19,000 has the 12,000 in it. So
Okay.
it's really 6%, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So am I
What-
not telling them their full closing costs when I tell them 3%?
Not if you're adding your commissions to it, it's more.
Well,
than-
that should be higher then, because another 3% would be 24,000. That's what I'm saying. That number doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, 400,000 times 3% is 12 grand.
And then our
Um,
3% is another 12 grand. You see where I'm saying it doesn't make sense?
So it's the total closing cost is 21, so plus 12 is 24. And then 18, but in the fixed costs, I think if I should show you page 2 of this, it would help, and I'm sorry I didn't put
That's
it
okay.
on the computer.
I was just wondering because
But
I wanted it to be accurate.
commission is 3% and closing cost is usually about 3%. Closing
That's why I
cost-
do it on paper. Just
Closing
because
cost-
on here it's actually showing less is why I'm saying that.
Mm,
Because it should be around 24.
got it. Well, I'm happy to jump on and just look at what you're looking at. I think if I'm looking at mine, you're looking at yours. I don't
I'm
know
looking
how-
at yours. No, I'm looking at yours.
Okay.
But it's all good. I think I understand it. It's just, it's probably not exactly at 3%. That's why it's at like 2.6 or something. It's just lower. I just was wondering what's more accurate because I don't want to show somebody something and then they're like, wait, the
Oh,
closing costs are
so
actually about 2
I
grand
see what-
higher.
I see what you're saying. So when you say 3%, that should cover most closing costs.
Yeah.
And you're doing the Disneyland close. It's a little bit more. Closing costs are always a little bit less than 3%, unless there's some fluky thing like a buy down or something.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's not exactly 3% closing cost. The lender fees, origination fee is based on a percentage. And so it's just easy to say closing costs are about 3%.
Yeah, that's what I usually do, but I guess I've never used this paper and I'm just wondering like, is this usually pretty accurate and I'm safe to use this? Like I don't usually use this and it seems less than what I usually tell them.
Oh, I would say, this is an estimate. These aren't your actual lender fees or your actual escrow fees, but this is an average. So until we know what lender you're working with, or we can have your lenders do this for you to make it 100% accurate.
Okay,
It's just an
right.
estimate.
cool. I just never used it. That was all. I just first time looking at the buyer one, I only used the selling net sheet. But yeah, okay, cool. So I'll use that.
Good question.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the training.
On,
All right, bye.
anybody else have any other questions before I leave ya?
Thanks for this. I don't know, does it actually read?
Well,
Yes. Oh, okay. I didn't hear it go off. That's fine. Chris with the city of your guys' inspection for your EV charging plug.
Is everybody good in the training room? I don't know if you could hear me anymore. Oh, you guys are on mute. Are you good, or do you have questions? Okay, bye-bye.
So like we were immune and we couldn't like get this report.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Do you guys need anything? Are you guys just chatting up? Are you good before I take
Yeah,
off?
no, it's really helpful, like.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think it'd be really great to revisit it while everybody gets more and more stories, you know, and experience.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, thank you, Robin.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
So